Global temperature has been rising for decades and it keeps rising. The years 2014, 2015 and 2016 all set new records in the global temperature. Nevertheless, and somewhat surprising to me and some colleagues, there has been a major media debate about a supposed slowdown of global warming a few years ago, also reflected in a number of scientific papers mentioning a so-called hiatus in global warming. Now, has global warming really slowed down and has it accelerated again since? This is what we're looking at in our new paper, and the question here, of course, is not whether if you pick out some short intervals you find some with faster and some with slower temperature rise. That goes without saying, given it's a noisy data series. The question is whether there is anything significant about that goes beyond what you would naturally expect given the amount of noise in those data. And the typical kind of diagram that has been used to illustrate this alleged slowdown looks like this, and it shows that indeed the second red trend line looks less steep than the first red trend line. But there are several problems with this, even though this is a suggestive diagram. The first problem is that these trend lines have a gap in between, and nobody ever talks about a sudden upward jump of global warming then followed by a period with a lesser rate of warming, but people have only been talking about this slowdown. And of course such a sudden jump is also quite unphysical and not the very best interpretation of the data. You can in fact fit linear trend lines that are joined, and then already much of the supposed slowdown is gone. Another issue is the choice of data set. Here we show the Hadley Center data, which show the greatest slowdown, if you like, and that's because they're missing out the Arctic, which is the region that has warmed the fastest over the recent 15 or 20 years. Other data sets use various additional available measurements from the Arctic to fill in that data gap there, like the Berkeley Earth data, and you can see that the slowdown is practically gone in this case. But there is a further problem that have led people to overstate the supposed slowdown, and that is the so-called multiple testing problem. That has to do with the fact of not doing just one experiment, but many experiments. And if you do many trials, of course, the chance of finding something that looks unusual goes up. Just imagine you meet one person and you find out their birthday is on the same day as yours. Now you might think, wow, that is very rare, 1 in 365 chance. And so it's unlikely that this happened by chance. Something, it's telling us something. That's a mistake, of course, and one reason for that is that you don't only meet one person in your life, you probably meet hundreds of people, and then the fact that some of those have birthday on the same day of the year as you is not unusual at all. And the same applies to global temperature. We've been watching it for decades, and sooner or later some period with a relatively low warming trend would turn up simply just by chance. And that indeed is what the statistical analysis in our paper shows. The global warming that we have observed since the 1970s is completely consistent with a steady rate of warming plus random noise of natural variability that has always been there and will always be there. So basically the big media debate about this alleged slowdown has been a debate in the noise and not a debate about any meaningful or significant signal.
Yo, my link down a Mapen this, down a Tom supermarket. See it there? Here's a stoplight, full safe, load out. Round the back. Round the guinea tree. Don't a stoplight or so. Vehicles strong, they even chop them now move. Everything lock off. See there? No, I'm not going live, man. Hello, stay there, Ivan.
Yeah, man, see some of them, man. See some of them, man. Jonah! What you light, you know? Light at them curtain after them, man. And nobody now have no rope. They have a key. They have a key. Yeah. Somebody go pull it over. Every chunk fly, man. What's the water deal with chunk, man? Yeah, man. See some of them, man. See some of them, man. Jonah! What you light, you know? Light at them curtain after them, man. And nobody now have no rope. They have a key. They have a key.
India's Kerala state is baking in the heat. Days of soaring temperatures have gripped many cities here and across the country. Sun-scorched and with no reprieve in sight, vegetation is wilting. The water in reservoirs is reaching critical levels, and farmers are getting anxious.
It's very hot outside. There is no rain or water for drinking. Everything is drying up.
The weather is getting hotter by the day. The drought has affected our farming. Even though we've tried to diversify from rice to vegetables and other items, it's still of no use.
Kerala is experiencing wild swings of extreme weather. Last month, the region was drenched with more than 4 times the average rainfall for the month of March. Now it's heading for what meteorologists already describe as the worst drought in more than a century.
Foreseeing a drought, the government had warned villagers beforehand. They urged farmers to prepare for low supplies. But still they are suffering because there is just no water.
Heat waves happen every year in India around this time. People may know it's coming, but that doesn't make life any easier. Gerald Tan, Al Jazeera.
Sky-high flames forcing thousands from their homes.
My driveway leading to my house looks like another planet.
More than 6,500 acres in 3 of Florida's West Coast counties burning.
This used to be a home, so tragic to see this.
More than 20 homes destroyed so far.
These fires are dangerous. They're extremely dangerous, so we have to be very cautious.
The Florida National Guard now part of the firefight, dropping water from helicopters to try and douse the flames.
We have a very significant challenge. We are not out of the woods, so to speak, yet.
Some residents decided not to evacuate, choosing instead to protect their homes themselves.
I'm not leaving. My house is all wood.
26 million people across Florida are under either a moderate or severe drought alert, a tinderbox potentially aggravated by crime. At least one of the fires has been labeled suspicious.
At this point in time, the fire is still under investigation.
A $5,000 reward now being offered for information as people wait to find out how much longer they'll have to stay away from their homes.
Here in the U.S., more than 100 wildfires continue to burn across Florida. The governor declared a state of emergency almost 2 weeks ago. Roxana Saberi has the latest.
For 2 days, flames raged across Florida's Collier County, forcing thousands of residents, including Jack Burson, to pack up and head for safety.
This is my farm, my family farm that's burning down as we speak.
Rain is bringing some relief to Florida's army of firefighters. Even the National Guard is pitching in.
Take this time, make sure your home is safe. This won't be the last fire of the fire season.
Firefighters eventually got this fire under control, allowing people to go home.
Our whole street, Kearney Avenue, just engulfed as a tunnel of flame.
Anthony Alston's backyard was completely torched.
4 boats and about 9 vehicles, but the house was still there. All of our animals were safe and we were safe.
Smoke is still a danger.
I know it's very toxic, and then it's kind of hard for me to breathe.
125 fires are blazing across nearly 85,000 acres of Florida. Firefighters have contained another massive fire in Polk County.
It's amazing what they can do.
So far, no homes or lives have been lost there. Polk County officials think the cause was arson, and they had a warning for whoever's responsible.
Don't sleep, don't relax, because we are on you, and it'll be hotter than this fire until you're locked up in jail.
In Lee County, authorities say a cigarette sparked a 400-acre blaze. Local authorities say the wildfires are the worst they've seen in years and follow one of Florida's driest winters. Firefighters are now looking forward to more rain, but Elaine, they are also worried that strong winds could spread the flames.
Dangerous situation. Roxana Saberi, thanks so much.
I want to get you updated on the wildfire situation going on in the southwest. Of course, we've got several fires, but we've been really closely following this sawmill fire. It's just south of Tucson, not too far from the border. And now it is still at about 40,000 acres, which would be also about 63 square miles. Pretty much the same as where it was at late on Wednesday. But the difference now is that it's about 20% contained, okay? Previously, it was only 7% contained. And this thing, it got really big really fast in the middle part of the week because it's been so darn dry. We've had a lot of wind around. I think really the wind has been the biggest factor here because it was very strong, especially on Tuesday and then also on Thursday again, where we had some wind gusts up over 30 miles an hour. And I'll tell you what, the next couple of days, you know, the nice thing is you wake up in the morning and the wind isn't too bad, but once you get into the afternoon, it really cranks up. And this is going to be a really tough one to fight along with the rest of those fires.
Severe weather this weekend has killed at least 8 people in the South and Midwest. Tornadoes killed several people in Texas. Others were lost in floods. In Arkansas, Mississippi, and Missouri, several people are still missing. Dozens are injured. Tonight, dangerous storms stretch across the central U.S., from the Gulf of Mexico all the way to the Great Lakes. Mark Strassman is in hard-hit East Texas.
About 50 minutes after the National Weather Service put Henderson County, Texas under a tornado watch, this twister tore across a highway. 20 miles northeast in Canton, drivers on I-20 were forced to pull over for this massive funnel cloud.
That was close.
Officials blame the tornado outbreak in Van Zandt County for at least 4 deaths and nearly 50 injuries.
There are people associated with these organizations represented here today who are, as we speak, going door to door, house to house, building to building.
Texas Governor Greg Abbott.
There's a possibility that one of these tornadoes was on the ground for up to a 50-mile stretch, which would be the longest stretch of a tornado on the ground that I've ever heard of.
At one point, nearly 10,000 people were without power after massive transmission poles like this one were knocked down. The tornadoes tossed cars at this dealership and blew this storage facility to pieces. Severe weather in Mississippi killed 1 person and a child was electrocuted while playing outside after a rainstorm. In Arkansas, 2 children were swept away from their mother in fast-moving floodwaters. They're still missing. Torrential rains there killed at least 1 person and roads and homes were flooded.
We were in about, I guess, 2 or 3 inches of water.
Yeah, all this was flooded when we came.
2 people drowned in Missouri, and this tractor trailer was swept away by floodwaters. Roads in Oklahoma were also washed out.
I'm a little bit scared that there's a possibility this may surpass the 2015 flood.
A spring blizzard in western Kansas closed Interstate 70 and dumped more than a foot of snow in the area. People in Colorado also had to dig out. Rena, this event center called the Rustic Barn was about to hold a prom when the twister hit. A half dozen kids wearing tuxes and gowns hunkered down inside. No one was hurt, but if the tornado had come along just an hour later, 100 people would have been inside.
Mark Strassman reporting from Canton, Texas.
A scene of devastation near the town of Canton that bore the brunt of the storms. Power was knocked out in much of the area, complicating the work of first responders on the scene. A triage station was set up in a local school hall as dozens of injured people were brought in for treatment.
Search and rescue forces are doing door-to-door searches today. There was a hasty search done last night, but they were extremely hampered by the multiple tornadoes, the rains, and the lack of access due to downed power poles and trees.
These are three different stretches where tornadoes touched down. The kind of yellow color is the swath of where the tornado touched down. The blue, and this is the important part, according to information that we have, each blue dot on there indicates an address where there was a building of some type. It could have been a home, it could have been a business, it could have been something else, but a building or facility that was impacted by these tornadoes.
The full extent of the damage caused by the tornadoes is still not known, and search operations continued through the day. Police say they will most likely resume at first light on Monday. Mike Hanna, Al Jazeera.
Floodwaters are rising in the nation's heartland, fueled by torrential rains.
The water rising so fast, some escaping just minutes to spare, while others, including at least 2 young children, are missing this morning. And ABC's Philip Mena is in Fort Smith, Arkansas, with the very latest. Good morning, Philip.
Paula, Dan, good morning. The Arkansas River here is rising this morning after a long night of heavy downpours in this region. More than 7 inches of rain falling in parts of at least 5 states, including this one, and that's triggering some dangerous flash flooding. Overnight flooding from heavy rain sweeping across the Midwest, leaving homes and cars completely underwater. Nearly 100 evacuations and nearly 3 dozen rescues reported in southern Missouri.
People were a little panicked. Some refused to leave their homes.
This man barely making it out before his vehicle is submerged.
Stay away from moving water. That's our biggest problem, is people that don't believe that it's a threat, and so they try and cross it, and we end up having to go rescue them.
In Arkansas, the search for 2 missing children suspended. The 18-month-old girl and 4-year-old boy were trapped inside a truck that was swept away, their mother managing to escape. In Oklahoma, a state of emergency. Hail and heavy rain pounding the state. Rushing waters trapping customers inside this restaurant.
There's people in there.
The search for those 2 missing children is expected to resume later today. The threat here far from over. We're expecting more rain, and we're already seeing several rivers in other areas at major flood stage. Dan, Paula?
That story about the kids is just wrenching. Philip, thank you.
They call themselves climate realists. They reject the idea that man-made greenhouse gas emissions threatens the climate. And they think that the U.S. should stop spending tax dollars on climate change programs. Here's Dean Reynolds.
Scientists may worry about melting polar ice, rising seas, or strengthening storms, but to Joe Bast, all of what others call warning signs of climate change are just the natural order of things.
Is it fair to call you climate change deniers?
We are climate realists. The efforts to stop global warming or slow it down are way disproportional to what the science suggests would be necessary.
From this office park near Chicago, Bast runs the Heartland Institute, a conservative think tank waging what he insists is a nonpartisan information war.
But if you look at the opinion polls, I think the American public are on our side. They say, okay, maybe climate is changing, maybe there's a human impact. We probably can't do anything about it. It's really expensive. We think we've wasted too much money on this already.
Besides, he says, climate change isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Cold weather kills more people than warm weather does. So on net, more people would benefit in a warmer climate.
Most climate scientists, the United Nations, as well as NASA, dismiss these arguments as propaganda for fossil fuels. But Bast, who is not a scientist, can count on a very powerful ally now.
So Obama's talking about all of this with the global warming and that, a lot of it's a hoax. It's a hoax.
Bast looks with approval on Mr. Trump's decision to roll back regulations limiting greenhouse gases and to his appointments of fellow skeptics in the administration. Climate change, he says, is a naturally occurring cyclical phenomenon caused mostly by the sun, not an approaching disaster accelerated by carbon dioxide emissions caused by humans.
There is still much to learn about
the Institute is now sending that message in books and videos to 300,000 public school teachers and college professors. And despite a tepid reaction to the mailings, Bast believes the tide has turned.
Are you winning? We're winning big time. 10 years from now, nobody's going to be talking about global warming. It's going to be a bad memory.
And not a nightmare. Dean Reynolds, CBS News, Arlington Heights, Illinois.
On this Earth Day, scientists in Alaska are sounding the alarm about rapidly melting polar ice. Barry Peterson has our report.
With temperatures soaring this last winter to 50 degrees above normal, the area around the North Pole is melting, and the Arctic sea ice is shrinking at a rate never seen before.
We're not talking about something that's 100 years from now. We're talking about something that's going to happen in the next decade.
Jeremy Mathis is director of Arctic research for NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration.
The Arctic is warming twice as fast as other parts of the planet.
We met Mathis at Utqiagvik, Alaska, once called Barrow, the farthest northern city in the United States, where NOAA has a lonely outpost monitoring the Arctic sea ice.
Here on the polar ice, it's not what you see, but what's hidden below. The ice is thinning. It used to be 9 feet thick in some areas. Now it's more like 3. Why do I care about what's happening out there?
We care about the Arctic because it has connections to the entire northern hemisphere, to people down in the lower 48 states.
The warming Arctic is causing the jet stream to wobble across America, helping spawn massive weather events. And the number of billion-dollar events in 2017 is on track to set a record.
Oh, man!
And as America's weather becomes more destructive, early warnings become more critical. But scientists may lose their vital tools like climate monitoring satellites targeted by the Trump administration. Mick Mulvaney is the administration's budget director.
As to climate change, I think the president was fairly straightforward, is that we're not spending money on that anymore. We consider that to be a waste of your money.
We're going to be less aware of what's coming down the road.
John Walsh is chief scientist at the International Arctic Research Center at the University of Alaska in Fairbanks.
We're basically ignoring threats to the well-being of future generations.
In Alaska, warmer temperatures are melting the permafrost. Villages are literally disappearing. And scientists say Alaska today is fair warning of the climate change future for the rest of America. Barry Peterson, CBS News, Utqiagvik, Alaska.